We will probably be repeating a lot of what we've been doing in our dominant dark panel. But here we have a new objective, and that is to keep everything in here a dominant light and repeat some of the lifting out and softening of edges just as we did before. If we have some measure of success with something, don't hesitate to repeat it. The more that you repeat something, the better you'll learn what the lesson is about. So with my template and a combination of tapes, I can lift out a little bit of the surf action, often in the distant waves. And it's very important that we continue with the same ideas. If we constantly change our ideas, we will never master painting. The masters repeat their successful, or what they consider is their successes, and that is the way that a lot of self-taught painters have done, is repeat the process until you've perfected it. And again, don't try to lift everything out all at once. We can lift out with our oil painting brushes if we want, for a little more control in certain areas. And is a nice opportunity to create soft edges and do this in stages. So in the next few lessons, I will repeat myself for your benefit and to finish the painting. Why should I do anything different other than different values? I still want the same effects in each of the 3 panels, and then the 4th one will do something totally different with it. It's for these shadows. And I'll do the same to the dominant middle value. I'll move this panel up here so that you can see easily the changes that I'm making. Now, using the same template, I can move it very carefully, remove the tape from your dry watercolor paper surface. Try not to injure that paper surface. And we can use this same template over here on another part of this painting and paste it down around our rock and use our wipeout method again. We'll use the cool glazes in these mountain range areas back here, and we'll start with a very light mountain range in the background. I wish to soften the edges of our mountain range, of the bottom parts of our mountain range. Allow that to dry, or dry it with a hair dryer. And pick up a little more darker color. Cool seems to recede easier in most subjects. Not all subjects, but in most subjects. And we can define the edge of this mountain range, bring it forward, put some little texture like trees off in the distance. This could be very flat, it doesn't have to be modeled. So with the tip of my brush, I'm just going into areas and place some texture in those areas. And more texture in one area and less texture in the other area. Then come back and soften the edge the bottom edge of our mountain range with just plain water. Might need to scrub it just a little bit if it starts to dry. Paper is very dry at this point. We can come back and join those glazes together. We can dry that area as well. So to delineate this just a little more, we can put another mountain range just to give it dimension in the background, not wanting to bring too much attention to it. Very flat, and then soften the bottom edge and bring it up to our beach line. Parts of California coasts are very rugged and very wild. Trees grow right down to the edge. Then with plain water, I will soften that edge just a little bit. It doesn't have to be too soft. It can be a little bit firmer. Then we can define this rock and some rocks out here because there's some white surf out there. Since we have our blue mixed with our sepia for the background, more blue, come back in here and now remember that this will dry 20 shades lighter than what we first apply. So don't be afraid to put it in dark enough. And then as we come closer to the wave action, I'll use some dry brush in this area just to break up those edges and continue with my waves. Then as that water gets closer to the shore, we can see through the water a little clearly and the water turns green. Now we didn't do this before, but we can do it now to bring this forward just a little bit from the background, separate it from the background, bringing in some other color. And put a little of that color in the background as well, just to make the transition softer. And we can come over here and put a little bit of that wave pattern coming in to the shore. The smaller brushes can give you dry brush a lot easier than the bigger brushes. And I can indicate the shadow parts of our wave. Go ahead and put it in fairly dark. As this comes forward, there's a shadow. And sure that it dries light, I'll simply wet the edges, bringing some of the color down to the rock, even create a shadow on the rock of that wave. And don't forget to place a little bit of warmth in some of those shadows. And a dominant warmth in one area, a subordinate warmth, and an incidental. And blending them into other areas that you're going to paint. Use your Kleenex to soften edges. Since I'm working upright, these globules form at the bottom of glazes. Then the shadow of this wave onto this part of the surf. And I'll soften the edge with just plain water. Changing brushes again. Now I'm using my flat brush. The reason I'm using sepia in this area is that sepia has very little temperature to it. And the warmth throughout this painting is complemented by the cool throughout the painting. And to be neutral, the rocks can be a combination of sepia and warm and cool. So this time I'll place the shadows on this side of the rock with the crevices of the edge of my brush. And then as we get down towards the water, the rock is darker because it's wet. Well, the whole rock is wet, but... And then the cool reflective light in those rocks. And cool reflective light here and here. And since I began this striation of crevices, I should continue it so that they relate. Do something different, then these rocks won't relate to each other. Very important that we keep some unity in your painting by painting the same type of delineation in each area. If you use a different delineation, then they don't relate. A little more blue on the shadow side of this reflective light of this rock, and rock is in water, it's very rounded. Let that dry. Since this is our dominant light value, we can allow certain shadows to be light and others to be dark. I'll paint the reflections of the rocks in the water. And the shadows of the rocks, shadow over white, can be blue. And I'll break up those edges with our little liner. Just a little texture in those areas. Linear qualities. If they're too much the same, change parts of it. Softening edges with just plain water. Nature has very few hard edges. All of this is just little finishing touches. I'm not saying much because I'm concentrating on trying to finish this for you at home. Now to some of our sepia, I'm warming our glazes. An interesting way of make a transition, a little bit more of different temperatures in here for interest. That's all it is. It's just an interesting way of creating interest. Register for the Juan Peña free watercolor painting classes by sending us your email. Indicate "Register me" in the subject line. You will receive the class syllabus and a link to the YouTube lesson. Your email will be confidential and will not be shared with anyone. Register at peña.freeartclasses@gmail.com.